Chapter 4, Dirty Business. Flush it down the bog, shouted Sheila. Zoe was sitting on her bed listening through the wall to her dad and stepmother arguing. No, replied Dad. Give it here, you useless skit. I'll bung it in the bin. Zoe often sat on her bed in her two small pyjamas listening through the paper-thin wall to her father and stepmother arguing way past her bedtime. Tonight they were of course arguing and shouting and screaming about Ginger Nut, who had died that day. As they lived in the flat on the 37th floor of a dilapidated council block which leaned heavily and should have been demolished decades ago, the family didn't have a garden. There was an old adventure playground in the central concrete square, shared by all the blocks on the estate. However, the local gang made it too dangerous to venture near. What you looking at? Tina Trotz would shout at everyone passing by. Tina was the local bully, and her gang of teenage hooligans ruled the estate. She was only 14, but she could have made a grown man cry, and often did. Every day she would flop on Zoe's head from the flats as the girl walked to school. And every day Tina would laugh, as if it was the funniest thing in the world. If the family had owned an allotment or even the smallest patch of grass anywhere on their estate they could call their own, Zoe would have dug a little grave with a spoon, lowered her little friend into the hole and made a headstone with a lollipop stick. Ginger Nut, my much-loved hamster, expect break dancer, and sometimes body popper, sadly missed by his owner and friend Zoe, R.I.P. But of course they didn't have a garden, no one did. Instead, Zoe had wrapped her hamster carefully in the page of her history exercise book. When her dad finally returned home from the pub, Zoe gave him the precious little package. My dad will know what to do with him, she thought, but Zoe hadn't reckoned on her horrible stepmother getting involved. Unlike her new mum, Dad was tall and thin. If she was a blowing ball, he would be a skittle, and of course blowing balls often knocked over skittles. So now Dad and Sheila were arguing in the kitchen about what to do with the little package Zoe had given to Dad. It was always awful hearing the two of them shouting at each other, but tonight was proving particularly unbearable. I suppose I could get the poor little girl another hamster, ventured Dad. She was so good with it. Zoe's face lit up for a moment. Are you crazy? Sneered her stepmother. Another hamster? You're so useless. You can't even get a job to pay for one. There are no jobs, pleaded Dad. You're just too lazy to get one, you useless skit. I could find a way for Zoe. I love my girl so much. I could try to save up some of my benefit money. That's hardly enough to keep your prawn cocktail crisps, let alone feed a beast like that. She could feed it leftovers, protested Dad. I'm not having another one of those disgusting creatures in my flat, said the woman. It's not a disgusting creature, it's a hamster. Hamsters are no better than rats, Sheila continued. And worse, I work all day on me hands and knees keeping this flipping flat spick and span. She does no such thing, thought Zoe. The flat is an absolute tip. And then the nasty little thing comes along and does its dirty business everywhere, continued Sheila. And while I'm on the subject, you aimed it in the bog could be better. Sorry, what you doing? Put a sprinkler on it and at the end of it. Keep your voice down, woman. The little girl was once again finding out hard ways that secretly listening to your parents talk could be a very dangerous game. You always end up hearing things you should never have had. Besides, Ginger Nut didn't do the dirty business everywhere. Zoe always made sure she picked up any rouge droppings from his secret runs around the room and put them in the with loo paper and then flushed them safely down the toilet. I'll take the cage down the prawn shop then, said Dad. I might get a few quid for it. I'll take it down the prawn shop, said his wife aggressively. I'll just spend the money down the pub. But now, put the nasty thing in the bin. I promised Zoe I could give him a proper burial in a park. She loved Gingerbread. She taught him tricks and everything. You're being pathetic. A break-dancing hamster. Absolute rubbish. That's not fair. And you're not going out again tonight. I don't trust you. You'll be back down that pub. It'll shut down. Knowing you, you'll just have to wait inside until it opens tomorrow morning. Now, come on. Zoe heard the pedal bin open with the stamp of her stepmother's chubby foot and the faint sound of a thud. With tears streaming down her face, Zoe lay down in the bed and covered herself with the duvet. She turned to the right-hand side. In the light half, she stared at the cage, as she did every night. And there's a picture of it. It was agonizing to see it empty. The little girl closed her eyes and couldn't sleep. Her heart was aching, her brain was spinning. She was sad, she was angry, she was sad, she was angry, and she was sad. She turned to her left side. Maybe it would be easier to sleep facing the grimy wall rather than staring at an empty cage. She closed her eyes again, but all she could do was think of Gingerbread. Not that it was easy to think, what with the noise coming from the neighbour's flat. Zoe didn't know who lived there. People in the tower block weren't exactly close, but most evenings she heard shouting. It seemed like a man screaming at his daughter, who would often cry. Zoe felt so sorry for her, whoever she was. However bad Zoe thought her life was, the girls sounded worse. But Zoe blocked out the shouting and soon fell asleep, dreaming of Gingerbread break dancing in heaven. And tomorrow I read chapter